This is a smart #3, which means we have to deal with a couple of elephants in the room. First of all, smart used to make tiny city cars, and this is not tiny or a city car. The other thing is it's called #3, which is a daft name for a car. But if you can get your head around the bizarre reinvention of smart, this is a really rather good car. But before I tell you all about it, please click the like button and subscribe, and maybe put in the comments something about your favourite reinvention. While you've been typing into the comments, I've been thinking about this car because I really like it and I'm trying to think how to describe it to you. It's about the same length as a Mercedes A-Class. The styling looks a bit like a shrunken Mercedes SUV, and the interior has the quality of a Mercedes, and it's designed and engineered by Mercedes. But it's made in China by a company called Geely, and many of the bits used in this are also used to make the Volvo EX30. Confused? Yeah, me too, but such is the way of the global car business. So the result of all this reinvention and crossbreeding is a car which, if it had that badge on the front, no one would complain. But the cheapest EQA, which is about the same size as this car, is £12,000 more. But instead, this car's expected to start at around £37,000. And that's for the version which has a bigger battery. If you can cope with a smaller range, then the entry-level #3 costs just under £33,000. That cheapest model is called the Pro, and it has an LFP power pack, which uses fewer precious metals than the lithium-ion cells you find in most other electric cars, so it's cheaper to make. The downside is that it has a smaller capacity and therefore less range. The 49 kWh battery gives an official range of 202 miles. Its £32,950 price puts it up against the top versions of the MG4, the Citroën EC4 and even super middies like the Corsa Electric and Mini. Spend £36,950 and you'll get the Pro Plus, which is nothing to do with those caffeine tablets that students use to get them through exam revision. The extra cash means you're treated to a 66 kWh battery, giving 270 miles of range. The top premium version, at £39,950, gets a heat pump, which is better in cold weather, and a more efficient motor, which increases the range to 283 miles. You get good stuff even with the cheapest version, like this huge panoramic roof and a 12.8-inch screen with an inexplicable cartoon cheetah in the bottom of it. You also get power seats, and 19-inch wheels are standard even on the cheapest model. Oddly, these wheels are used on the range-topping premium version, even though they kind of look like cheap plastic covers. But I think they're growing on me. I quite like the colour now too. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. There's that feeling of Mercedes quality too. I mean, these vents could be straight out of a C-Class. The dashboard is very similar to you get in a #1, but the vents are a different shape. There's a little fact for the geeks out there. Everything you touch feels nice, and if you're a Volkswagen ID.3 driver, you're going to feel really jealous of the trim here. Storage-wise, we've got a little hatch here, which is a wireless charging pad for your phone with 2 USB ports. Some drinks holders here and a little slot here to put your pens and things. And then there's this big cubby here, which will swallow a bottle of water whole and is chilled, which is nice. There's also this big gap underneath the central spine here where I could put my handbag if I had one. One grumble, which I know will make people who are used to Mercedes scoff, is that this stalk does the gear selection and the one on the left side does everything else. Well, almost. It means you need to be good at puzzles to turn on the wipers, but I guess you get used to it. I'm just not yet. CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, which is just as well because the standard navigation and media screens are a bit baffling. Smart has done away with a lot of the buttons too for things like adjusting the mirrors. Instead, thinking you'll be happy to use this cartoon cheetah and ask it to do things for you. I'm not so sure that works. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but I do feel a bit of a numpty talking to the car. And you have to pause your podcast or miss the end of the news to do it. Buttons are nice. In the back, you expect that there's not going to be that much headroom because of that kind of coupe roofline, but actually there's loads. I'm only 5'8", but I've got a good few inches here. And this big glass roof gives a really airy feel. Knee room, again, pretty good really. I think that's because this car is 30 centimetres longer than a hashtag 1, and this is where you feel the benefit. One thing I will say though is that the floor is quite high. The batteries are underneath too, which means that your feet are kind of a bit up here. Frameless doors, very posh and coupe-like. Moving around to the back, and there's a feature which I really like, and I think you will too, although you might get a little sick of it when you have to explain it every time you drop someone off at the station and they're trying to open the boot. To get the boot open, you press the centre of the A. It reveals an opening which isn't that big, and there's this annoying lip, but it's 370 litres in there, which is a little bit less than the Volkswagen ID.3, but it's a decent space. A lot of that space is underneath this shelf though, and the space under there is a bit of an awkward shape. Fold the seats down and you've got 1160 litres, which again isn't the biggest, but it'll probably do for that IKEA trip. There are some bits here which aren't quite Mercedes quality, but at least you don't have to slam the boot yourself. Should we go for a drive? Well, the first thing, there's no start-stop button, so you just put it into drive and off you go. The second thing I've noticed is you're not going to go short of information. I've got the big screen here of course, but there's also another smaller screen in front of me and a head-up display, both of which are telling me how fast I'm going. Now this is a car with plenty of power. And this isn't even the Barabbas version. This has 268 horsepower. That's what you get even on the cheapest version. Now, a Volkswagen ID.3 or a Coupe Reborn and lots of the other Korean rivals have 200 horsepower, which is plenty, but 268's a lot. I mean, an Astra has 156 to give you some idea of the difference. This is not a slow car. All that power goes to the back wheels because that's where the motor is. The Barabbas is four-wheel drive, but I honestly can't see why you'd want more power than this unless you're a complete speed freak. Now the steering, on a windy road like this, it feels great. It's nicely weighted and you've got lots of feedback. But when you're going on the motorway or on a straighter bit of road, there's a slightly strange dead spot in the middle when you're driving along. And it just means that you're having to do constant corrections. Slightly irritating. Like most electric cars, you've got 3 drive modes, and thankfully you don't have to go into the menu and fiddle around to get them. There's a separate button for it. You've got Eco, Comfort and Sport. My other niggle on this car is the throttle pedal. Now I don't mean to sound like a wimp, but it's quite heavy, so if you're in a country lane like this or going through a town and you're constantly having to pump the pedal, it gets quite wearing, and if you're on a motorway for a constant time, you're going to be looking for that cruise control. The other thing is that it's very, very sensitive, even in Comfort and Eco mode. So it's quite difficult to be smooth on roads like this because the power delivery is so instant. I'd like just a little more subtlety to that. The smart engineers have told me though that they can do over-the-air updates, and they have been doing them on the hashtag 1 already. So maybe that and the steering are something they'll fix. But it is very refined in here, very quiet. There's no squeaks, no rattles, and it rides nicely too, even on these bigger wheels. That swooping roofline means that the back window is a bit small, and especially with the headrests up, you can't see much out the back. It's not a problem when you're parking though, because you get one of those 360-degree helicopter view cameras as standard. As for the handling, well, I'm not going to go nuts because I'll fall off a cliff and die in a fireball, but it does feel sporty. It feels confident, there's loads of grip, it's well balanced, and I think because you're sitting lower than you are in like an SUV, you do get more of a feel of a connection to the road. The brakes, well, you've got 2 levels of regen, standard and strong, and actually it's fine. Strong means that you've got virtual one-pedal driving, so it will go completely to a stop if you want it to. But they're nicely balanced, and the actual brake pedal itself feels real sort of confidence inspiring. You know, it stops you really quickly. Like all new cars these days, the hashtag 3 has lots of safety kit, some of which is more intrusive and useful than others. I actually don't mind the system on this. The lane departure warning, for example, just tugs at the wheel gently rather than binging and bonging at you. So I've left it on. I've not felt the need to turn it off like I do in some cars. Apparently, owners of the hashtag 1 found that system too troublesome. So they changed it on a over-the-air update, so you now have a nicer, less intrusive, less annoying system. Clever. Oddly, of all the settings, I think it's the comfort one which is actually the more fun. Sport just makes the steering heavier and the throttle even more sensitive. Leave it in comfort all the time, I'd say, unless you need eco because you're just about to run out of charge. As for charging, well, let's deal with AC first. So the Pro versions, the Pro and the Pro Plus, have 7.4 kilowatts, which is kind of below the average in this class. Most rivals have 11 kilowatts, but it won't bother you that much if you just normally plug into your home wall box. The premium version gets 22 kilowatts though, which is unusually high and means that you'll be charging much faster if you've got access to three-phase electricity. As for the DC rapid charging, the smaller battery in the Pro version is at a maximum of 130 kilowatts, which isn't bad in this class. Go up to the bigger batteries in the Pro Plus and the Premium and you get 150 kilowatts, which is pretty good. I really like this car, which is a bit of a surprise because I didn't know what to expect from a brand that used to make city cars and now makes coupe, hatchback, crossover SUVs. But it's like a Mercedes which is more fun and £12,000 cheaper than the equivalent Mercedes too. Sort of sportier too, I suppose, a bit like Seat is to Volkswagen or maybe Mini to BMW. So well done, smart people. I'm off to reinvent myself, and next time you see me, I'll be a supermodel. If you want to know anything more about the Smart #3 or the #1 or any of its competitors, then like and subscribe and check out the website electrifying.com.